So Puss in Boots is officially a success. I feel safe saying that now, even though when I made my original review of the movie, a few people clowned on me for saying that. But here we are in the future, and it's undeniable that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was an overwhelming success for DreamWorks. That being rating-wise, box office-wise, and overall love for this movie. And for a good reason too, because this movie had so much in its favor. Its animation, its score, its story, its character arcs, everything in this movie contributed to a tornado of amazing qualities. But there is another reason why this movie was so good that I'm pretty sure everyone knows what it is. That being...
It has formed a fiery hairball in there. Leche, please! You drank all the leche. Shut the fuck up!
The villains were amazing. But I feel like saying these villains are amazing is an understatement. I mean, there's a reason why I'm making this video in the first place. These villains echo previous DreamWorks villains to a T, so much so that they easily surpass a good majority of them. And one of them even surpasses all of them. And in today's video, I'd like to explain to you why. DreamWorks villains are on a whole nother tier when it comes to animated villains, and Peach is also there too.
I'm so miserable. I hate you!
With most being perfectly crafted for the movie, woven tightly into the story in relation to the protagonist. Whether they are meant to be clever and conniving, genuinely evil, or downright hilarious, each DreamWorks villains act as a serviceable antagonist for their respective movie, and Peach is there too.
Yeah. Double homicide.
Like, honestly, other than Disney, no other studio has this many iconic and well-known villains. Hal, Ramses, Lord Farquaad, Mr. Poopy Butthole, oh, Professor Poopy Pants. Oh, I shouldn't really get those confused since one of the voice actors for those characters did something really bad. I can't believe Nick Kroll works on Big Mouth SMH. So if you were to ask me, Christopher, what goes into a good villain? Because you refer to me by my first name. I think a good way to answer that is by taking a look at multiple villains from the DreamWorks catalog and go from there. Unpopular opinion.
There's one more secret I feel I have to share with you. I did not care for
Shrek 2. And I know saying that on this part of the internet is a statement that would probably get me hunted down with pitchforks and fire, like I'm some sort of large green goblin. But even with me not being too fond of Shrek 2, I cannot deny Fairy Godmother's right of being titled a really good villain. She is behind everything.
2 steps ahead. I am always 2 steps ahead.
She's behind Fiona being locked away, she's a girl boss, and she's transphobic.
And what does he find? Some gender-confused wolf.
Damn, never mind, we gotta cancel her.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. This just in, apparently the woke mob is now trying to cancel Fairy Godmother for being transphobic. Now, personally, I think it's a good thing to make fun of gay people because they groom children. Anyway, I'm going to go tell little boys now goodbye.
Dang, well she's gone. I wonder if there's another Shrek villain that lived up to her presence and even surpasses her in some regards.
Hey, it's me, Rumple. I'm only doing an impression because the text-to-speech website I use doesn't do Rumple good. Like, listen to this shit.
It's me, it's that freaking villain.
That's not English.
Anyway, it's a me. It's Shrek villain that did all that.
Ed Sheeran, where did you come from? Anyways, both Rumpelstiltskin and Fairy Godmother are 2 examples of what goes into a good villain. In regards to Rumple, he's a genuine threat. Through his cunning manipulation, he rules far, far away. He outsmarted Shrek, and because of that, Shrek will die in 24 hours. He won, and he's in the best Shrek movie. Anyway, and Fairy Godmother is organically woven into Shrek and ultimately the Shrek universe. She sowed the seeds of Fiona being in prison, something that wasn't even questioned in the first movie. And without Fiona being in prison, we wouldn't have the Shrek franchise. So those are the usual traits that we come to expect when we're given a villain. Now, of course, there are plenty more traits to come to a villain, which we'll get into some soon, but those are the typical archetype when it comes to an animated villain. But there is one more trait a villain can have that, in my opinion, elevates said villain when done correctly. That being... Call me a comment under a TikTok video of someone ugly because y'all need to hear me out. Yes, a villain can be a straightforward threat with the first 2 attributes I mentioned and be perfectly fine. A lot of villains are like that. But when a villain can both be an organic, genuine threat and also hilarious, nothing can top that. Which was why my favorite DreamWorks villains were Rumpelstiltskin, which I think is kind of fair, and Professor Poopy Pants because he was genuinely hilarious.
Please get an ice cream sandwich?
Just scram, okay? We're closed for Ebola.
And a sizable threat in the scope of the movie. Get it? Cause he got big. Cut to December 23rd, 2022, the day a silly little movie about an orange cat came out. Now I, like probably most people, probably wasn't expecting much out of a sequel to a movie that honestly didn't warrant one. Like, what did the first Puss in Boots movie have? Humpty? He was funny, and Princess Carolyn playing Jill, so I guess that was cool too. But other than that, I'm sure most people weren't expecting anything of worth than the stellar animation shown in the trailer to come out of this movie. So imagine everyone's surprise when this movie, a sequel to a mid-movie, turned out to be the best animated movies released this year. And it was good for a plethora of reasons like mentioned before, like the foreshadowing, the comedy, and obviously the animation. But I think the crowning achievement that this movie pulled off are how striking the villains turned out. And while recording my audio, I kind of realized that there is a parallel between the Puss in Boots movie and the Suicide Squad movie. The first movie for both of those franchises came out and wasn't really received well. They were both mid, and some were worse than others, and no one expected anything to come of those characters. Then come, years later, a sequel to that franchise that elevates said franchise to the extremes that the first movies couldn't even possibly dream of achieving. All because of the villains. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the two of them. Starting off with Big Jack Horner, then Wolf, because I feel like leaving the best for last. Now I need to address something that I said in my review for Puss in Boots. That isn't really true. Bro, he's just a gay, yassified kingpin, and I love it. Oh, wrong clip, but I mean, it's still true though. Jack Horner is the best DreamWorks villain. I was kidding.
And I don't mean it metaphorically, or rhetorically, or poetically, or theoretically, or in any other fancy way.
I was joking, straight up. Now my buddy Jack Hound Dog is still my favorite villain of all time, and honestly one of my top 5 characters. Move aside, Roy Koopa. Cactus Jack Horner is my new favorite. Now even though he's not the best DreamWorks villain, he is probably top 10, which I don't think is too unpopular to say for a lot of reasons, but I believe there's an underlying theme that most people overlooked when experiencing the girl boss that is Jacksepticeye Horner. Jack Horner is the anti-Puss in Boots. Like, think about it. What was Puss's early life? Abandoned at birth with no one except Humpty who cared for him and having to struggle and steal to get through life. Puss had nothing. What did Jack Black Horner have?
Just loving parents, and stability in a mansion, and a thriving baked goods enterprise for me to inherit. Useless crap like that.
And like most rich people, he became mad with power and wealth, but still insecure due to him not having any magical power in a world absolutely riddled with it, setting out on a mission to become the master of all magic. Fast forward to where we are now in the setting of The Last Wish, we see a pattern between him and Puss. Both think they are larger than who they are. Big Jack Horseman thinks he's a god, and Puss thinking he's immortal, laughing in the face of death. But both now on a quest to have one of their greatest wish come true, we get a chance to see who they truly are deep down. Puss grapples with his mortality, fearing death for the first time, and with that fear learns through the help of his friends that having one life is more than enough to live a happy one. But what do we learn about Big Jack hormone replacement therapy? Well, we learn,
don't you know I'm dead inside?
And due to his pure evilness, making him an irredeemable monster, he's unable to see past his insecurities and want for power that it ultimately causes the end of him. While Puss gets to live on, coming to terms that wanting that feeling of being larger than life is one that shrouds the actual life you're living. High back corner sofa's evilness meshes well with his comedy, making him very enjoyable to see on screen. And like I said in my Puss in Boots review, he gives me total Rumpelstiltskin vibes in regards to how their comedy meshes well with their wickedness. Anyway, Horner is such an amazing villain with so many amazing qualities, but the craziest thing of all is that he's not even the best in this movie. Lobo or Death, the Big Bad Wolf or Daddy, you know, whatever you want to call him, is such a wonder. It is absolutely amazing how Death managed to be the best character in a movie riddled with perfect characters, and he was only on screen collectively for 7 minutes. And in those 7 minutes, he manages to be the best, the scariest, the most intimidating, the most organic, and the sexiest in all DreamWorks movies. But remember how I mentioned those 3 qualities to an antagonist, them being an organic villain, being a threatening presence, and overall funny? Well, this character did something I never could imagine a villain for an animated movie could do. He replaced being funny with being downright horrifying. Every scene with him, from his first appearance at the bar to the ending, he was scary to watch. Remember in the Puss in Boots video where I said this? And the end scene with him was really dramatic and anxiety inducing. Like, the theater I was in legitimately started shaking because of the bass, and it was really amazing. Well, I was wrong, because remember how I also mentioned I went to go watch it with my friends again after that video was made? Well, I found out in the second viewing that the movie theater was not shaking. It was me. That end sequence, watching it for the first time, was so heart-pounding that it made me lose my breath. And honestly, that is how you do a scary villain. Off the top of my head, I can only think of a few villains from animated movies that went for that scary effect. Them being everything from 9, Other Mother, Pitch, and now Death. And of the 4, 2 are from DreamWorks movies, and while one tops all the others, one is really pathetic, and for a specific reason. Pitch is boring. Sorry to say, but in a movie packed with fantastical characters and amazing designs, Pitch looks like a villain you'd see from a PS3 game. And it's not only the design that's bad, but everything about him. He is the exact definition of a one-dimensional character.
No. Yo, I want to make the world dark because long ago these guys came around and made it, not dark.
And it sucks because I feel like Pitch could have been as great as Death if he was more like Death. Like, make him scary, make him more antagonistic. Literally, he embodies the fear of the dark. You could do so much with that, but they didn't. Like, when I see Death, I'm afraid, but when I see Pitch, all I'm wondering is if his mother drank alcohol when she was pregnant with him. But back to Death, he is the perfect villain for Puss because, like, obviously, Puss is a cat with 9 lives, and being on his final life, it makes sense for Death to be on his tail. Make a cat joke here. And they portrayed that perfectly. The way Death, either subtly or majorly, eggs on and taunts Puss, who once laughed in the face of Death, is so anxiety-inducing and executed masterly. Death doesn't have to be present constantly throughout the movie, and the filmmakers knew that by giving Death the 7-minute runtime. He just had to be a subtle reminder that Puss cannot and will not ever escape him, because no one has ever been able to do that. This just adds to how amazing this movie is, because in a movie full of bad guys, the filmmakers knew that the villains didn't have to be fully present, too serious, or even bad at all to make a good antagonist. It just had to be everything Pitch isn't.
You'll protect them. But who'll protect you?
Shut the hell up, bitch.
But with everything being said, guys, I want to leave us off with something huge. Today's an important day in Grand% history, because today we did something that everyone thought was impossible. Today we went an entire video without referencing Breaking Bad. Give it up. Give it up. We did what no one thought we could have done. We did it. We did it.